Sorry I'm starting so late this morning. It's disrespectful. I apologize for keeping you waiting, and it's not a good way to start the new year, being this late. I took a week off and forgot how to do the show. Well, Rudy Giuliani might be sentenced to jail today for contempt of court. Friday's 7-hour hearing did not go well for him, as Rudy tried to convince the judge that he is cooperating with lawyers who won that $148 million judgment against him after Rudy defaulted on a defamation lawsuit filed by 2 Georgia election workers who Rudy repeatedly and falsely accused of stuffing ballots for Joe Biden in 2020. I'll talk more about this a little later on the show. Rudy has not been forthcoming with this judge, and Rudy keeps promising to turn over the deed to his $6 million Manhattan apartment, as well as all his other worldly possessions. We're talking about almost $150 million here. Months and months of promises, countless hearings before the same judge, Rudy still failing to deliver the deed to his 10-room apartment in Manhattan. He hasn't delivered the title on a Mercedes. There's Yankee memorabilia said to be worth tens of thousands of dollars. None of this will make a dent in the $148 million he owes these 2 women. The problem for Rudy is he also owes millions to lawyers and accountants, so he is unable to perform due diligence. He cannot do the necessary discovery. He sometimes tells the judge in the case, Judge Lewis Lyman, that I have a lawyer. The next hearing, he shows up without a lawyer. Then he shows up with a lawyer, but nobody's really sure if it is, in fact, a lawyer. Usually somebody who looks lawyerly is with him, but it's always a different lawyer. For the first time, Judge Lyman on Friday seemed sympathetic to Rudy Giuliani. Rudy testified for 3 hours. He seemed to be in a fog. I have no doubt he's making it up, the same way Uncle June did in The Sopranos, or Gigante, the Chin did, when he pretended to be senile. Rudy was all over the place. He told the judge Friday that he is currently involved in 20 other court cases. He said that under oath, and he is. He's got 20 other civil lawsuits, plus Georgia. That case is still going on. It's been stalled, but it's still going on. He told the judge, I don't have the time or the resources to find the deed to my New York City apartment, but I gave them the keys. What else I gave you the keys. The judge Friday, for the first time, sympathetically told him, look, we're running out of runway here, and I'm going to end up having no choice but to charge you with contempt. And that involves jail time. Rudy is 80. He's going to be 81 this year. He is a knockdown, drag-out alcoholic. He needs help. If this were an ordinary citizen, he'd be in jail. Well, there is another hearing today. Rudy will be testifying via Zoom, and that doesn't usually go well for Rudy. He loses his temper on Zoom. On Friday, he made the court appearance in person, and he behaved for the first time. He didn't lash out at the judge. He didn't lash out at the lawyers. It was a 7-hour hearing, and he walked out, stood in front of reporters, and basically, for the first time, had nothing to say, because it's finally dawning on Rudy Giuliani he's out of options. 4 years ago today, Rudy Giuliani stood on the ellipse and shouted, "For trial by combat." Well, I don't know. I doubt today, what a difference 4 years makes. I doubt today is the day he gets that jail sentence. If he doesn't behave, he might. But that day is coming. Something has to be done about Rudy. He is about to lose not just his $1 million apartment in New York, which he was supposed to surrender months ago. He's been trying to hold on to his Palm Beach condo. That's not going to happen. He's going to lose that. Plus, next week, he faces another contempt of court hearing in a federal D.C. courtroom because Rudy Giuliani cannot stop libeling these two women. So he faces one contempt charge for not turning over his assets. Next week, he faces another contempt charge for continually defaming these two women. More about Rudy later in the show. But sometime this year, he becomes a ward of the state. Not sure if it's prison, jail. I think it's going to be a psychiatric ward. It's getting really, really bad for Rudy Giuliani. Really, really bad. In other words, there's a lot to be grateful for. This is the mop-up for January 6, 2025. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for finding me. Please share this episode with your friends. That's the best way to help. Hey, remember that thing? What was it? Voter fraud. Remember voter fraud? Remember Donald Trump and Elon Musk kept warning that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were putting millions of migrants on buses and shipping them to all the swing states so they could cast illegal ballots on November 5th for Kamala Harris? Remember that? It's incredible. The second Donald Trump wins the election, that entire voter fraud problem, it completely disappeared. Donald Trump isn't even president yet, and already he's fixed it. Today, of course, January 6th, the day our Constitution mandates the presidential election to be certified, and this always goes well. It's just purely ceremonial. It's been exactly 4 years since Donald Trump's failed insurrection. According to the Justice Department, nearly 1,600 January 6ers have been arrested and charged. 10 members of either the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers are now serving time for seditious conspiracy. 800 others were or still are behind bars. And a new Quinnipiac poll shows 2/3 of Americans oppose Donald Trump keeping good on his promise to pardon the January 6ers. By the time you hear this, the election will have been certified and Donald Trump will officially be our new president. And that means we have just 14 days until Donald Trump resoils the Oval Office. The inauguration is 14 days away. Trump is reportedly upset that flags will be flying at half-mast during his inauguration. The flags have been ordered to fly at half-mast to remember the death of President Jimmy Carter and our democracy. We're losing Jimmy Carter and our democracy. Donald Trump welcomed Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to Mar-a-Lago this weekend to make Meloni feel at home. Trump went full commando, which is what he calls it when he takes off his wig to look like the man who pretty much invented fascism, Benito Mussolini. That's Donald Trump going full commando. Just whip that wig off and he looks just like Mussolini. Now, Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party can trace its roots all the way back to Mussolini. She is the first crypto-fascist to be elected in Italy since World War II. She is a fascist. She's a fascist. Officially a fascist. Trump praised her yesterday, calling Meloni a fantastic woman. Then he said to Maloney, I'd like you to meet Melania. Melania, Maloney. Maloney, Melania. Mike Johnson has proven himself a lot more resilient than people gave him credit for. I didn't. I said that I think he's going to last a long time. We elected a speaker Friday. He did it on the very first ballot. Initially, Johnson came up two votes short, but Donald Trump interrupted his golf game to hop on the phone and urged House Republicans Keith Self and Ralph Norman to switch their votes, and they did. They switched their votes. You might remember the January 6th committee discovered that Ralph Norman, just hours before Joe Biden was to be sworn in as our president, Ralph Norman, who just switched his vote, sent a text to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and that text read, Mark, in seeing what's happening so quickly and reading about the Dominion lawsuits attempting to stop any meaningful investigation, we're at a point of no return in saving our republic. Our last hope is invoking martial law. Please urge President to do so. That was a serious text hours before Joe Biden was sworn in, Ralph Norman calling on Donald Trump to invoke martial law. Norman admitted he sent that text and said, the only thing I have to apologize for is misspelling the word martial. God's honest truth. There are some, I'll go over it. There's some people in Washington, D.C. who don't like democracy. A total of 434 votes were cast in Friday's election for Speaker. Stacey E. Plaskett is the congressional delegate from the Virgin Islands. You might remember she served as one of the House impeachment managers for Trump's second Senate trial. On Friday, as the votes for Speaker were being counted, Plaskett interrupted the proceedings to complain that even though she represents the Virgin Islands, a U.S. colony, she and her constituents have no vote in Congress. She's basically an observer. 4 million people who are living under U.S. rule have no vote, no representation. As the clerk pounded the gavel for her to sit down and remain quiet, Plaskett reminded everyone that 4 million people live under colonial rule in Samoa, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and, of course, the District of Columbia. None of these territories have senators or members of Congress. To begin our new Congress on Friday, Democrats introduced H.R., that stands for House Resolution, H.R. They introduced House Resolution 51, which would give Washington, D.C. statehood. People of D.C., no senators, no members of Congress. They want to become a state, and Republicans oppose that because D.C. made the mistake of having way too many black people. In the end, Mike Johnson got exactly 218 votes. That's the precise number he needed. 218, he got it. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries got 215 votes. So, again, we're looking at a razor-thin majority for the Republicans for at least the next 30 days until the 3 seats left vacant by Matt Gaetz, Elise Stefanik. Elise Stefanik hopes to be the new UN ambassador, and Mike Waltz, Congressman Mike Waltz, left to become Trump's new national security advisor. He doesn't need to go through the Senate. He's the national security advisor. So until those 3 seats are filled, right now, what you saw on Friday is what you're going to see for the next 2 months. All it takes is 2 Republicans to gum up Donald Trump's agenda. Right now, Trump's agenda is to pass a 2025 budget. When those 3 seats are filled sometime in early spring, then Trump will attempt to pass a massive tax cut for the rich. and finance it by stripping the social safety net. In the end, it was one Republican, Thomas Massie of Kentucky. He was the only holdout. He refused to vote for Johnson. He said, you could rip my fingernails out. And he said, I will not vote for Mike Johnson. Massie instead cast his vote for Tom Emmer, the majority whip. It was Marjorie Taylor Greene and Massie back in May who introduced the resolution for Mike Johnson to vacate the chair, a resolution that ended up going down into defeat after Democrats stepped up and gave Johnson the votes he needed. Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced that motion in May for Johnson to vacate. But on Friday, she voted for Mike Johnson. There are reports that he bought her vote by promising to make her chairwoman of a subcommittee that will work closely with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy on bringing efficiency to our government. According to a new rules package passed by the House on Friday, every 2 years they pass a rules package, and that's how are we going to govern this body. So according to a new rules package passed Friday by the House, instead of one member of the House, it will now take 9 in order to file a motion for the Speaker to vacate the chair. And you got to remember, all 9 have to be Republicans. Democrats, because they're the minority party, can't file motions for the Speaker to step down. It used to be all you needed was one crazy Republican, and I think there's more than one. All you needed was one, and they would have to vote on whether or not Johnson should step down. Now it takes 9 Republicans. That rule, of course, was passed in response to Matt Gaetz's motion to vacate back in October of 2023. He filed a motion for then Speaker Kevin McCarthy to vacate. He convinced 7 others to vote with him. Gaetz did succeed in removing McCarthy. Well, because of that, the power no longer rests with one member. It must be 9. Congressman Nick LaLotta, a Republican representing New York's 1st congressional district, said this new rule was necessary to prevent one member from blocking the will of 97% of the Republican conference. He was saying 97% of House Republicans wanted Kevin McCarthy to remain as Speaker, but all it took was 8, the crazy 8. They voted against him. If they can find 9, I think it will take fewer votes now. It will take 3 votes. If you can find 9 Republicans to file the motion, you just need 3 to vote yes, and he's gone until they fill those other 3 seats. Well, the 119th Congress was gavelled into session on Friday. Congressman Jim McGovern of Massachusetts took to the floor and corrected much of the rhetoric spewed by Donald Trump and Mike Johnson, who've been insisting since Election Day that the American people gave them a mandate. Congressman McGovern reminded them they have no mandate because the GOP lost seats in the House in the last election, right? It took 8 for McCarthy to go. Now it would take 2. You bring in those new, so 5. They lost about 3 seats. They lost 3 seats. He said, if you thought Republicans had a razor-thin majority in the 118th, it's even tighter in the 119th Congress. You got no mandate. In fact, McGovern said this is, quote, the slimmest majority of any majority in nearly 100 years. Just to give you an idea of how far right some of these Republicans are. On the very first day of the 119th Congress, Lauren Boebert, she's back, Lauren Boebert of Colorado, introduced H.R., House Resolution, H.R. 129, which would abolish the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which I think is her food pyramid. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. Yeah, let's get rid of those guys. This was the family Christmas card Boebert sent out 3 years ago, with all 4 of her sons brandishing military assault-style rifles, because the family that shoots together ends up shooting one another together. During the past 3 years, we've learned that the Boebert's oldest son is definitely someone who we can trust with an assault weapon. And if you're wondering where Lauren's now ex-husband is in that picture, he's out back reloading. This is how, take a look at this picture, okay? Take a look at this picture. This is how stupid people even the playing field. Look at me. Not so stupid now, am I? Huh? Well, yeah, you're still stupid. In fact, those assault rifles make you even dumber, but nobody's going to tell you that because you're holding assault rifles. House Republican Andy Biggs of Arizona, remember him? He was on the phone with the Trump White House the day after January 6th, begging for a pardon because he was one of the movers of the Stop the Steal movement. Biggs introduced several bills on Friday, and this tells you what Republicans truly believe. People will call Andy Biggs a fringe element. If you're on the fringe in the Republican Party, all that means is you're saying the quiet part out loud. This is what they want. H.R. 86, which would abolish the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. He wants to get rid of OSHA. There would be no OSHA if it weren't for Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader created OSHA. One day I'll read you a list of what we owe Ralph Nader. H.R. 48, this is from Andy Biggs. H.R. 48 would mandate all women about to receive abortions to be forcibly administered an ultrasound by the government in order for them to hear the heartbeat of the fetus. Well, if it's administered by the government, is that ultrasound free? Right? Who's paying for it? That sounds like socialized medicine to me. I don't like it. If it's paid for by the government, I don't like it. Andy Biggs's H.R. 54 would order the president to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization. Why would we did so well on our own with COVID. Why would we want to be part of the World Health Organization? We got Bobby Kennedy and Dr. Oz. By the way, Biggs introduced all these crazy bills. Lauren Boebert introduced all these crazy bills with plenty of others, Republicans signing on. New bills to ban the banning of fracking. A bill to ban Washington, D.C. from becoming a state. H.R. 62, this is from Andy Biggs, would prohibit any federal dollars from being given to the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney's Office, which, as you all know, indicted Donald Trump and 18 others for attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election in that state. I believe this bill is being called the Yes, Mein Führer Act of 2025. H.R. 63, also known as the Please, Mein Führer, Don't Flush Until We Can All Admire It Act of 2025, that would prevent any federal funds from being given to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which successfully prosecuted Donald Trump last year and won a guilty verdict charging him with 34 felonies. Sentencing on that case is expected to be handed down by Judge Juan Merchan on the 10th of January. Friday, Judge Merchan indicated he has no intention of locking Trump up. Theoretically, Trump could be sent away for 4 years, but that was never going to happen, no matter who the defendant was, as long as he was white. You don't lock a white man up for the crimes that Donald Trump has been convicted of. Never happens. But if you're black, different story. To wit, former MSNBC anchor Carlos Watson, black, sentenced on December 16th to 10 effing years in prison for defrauding investors out of a couple of $1 million. 10 years in prison over a couple of $1 million. Rick Scott, Senator Rick Scott's hospital chain, defrauded Medicare and Medicaid to the tune of $1 billion. And all this white prick had to do was make sure the company, not him, the company paid a fine, and then he became governor of Florida. Now he's senator from Florida, all because he's a white prick. This is why teaching critical race theory has been outlawed in Florida. Judge Merchan is expected to hand down what is called an unconditional discharge. Sounds like one of my wedding nights. Sounds like 3 out of 6 of my wedding nights, those unconditional discharges. So what is an unconditional discharge? Why can't they speak English? Because they go to law school for 3 years and they have to make themselves sound smarter than they actually are. An unconditional discharge. It means the court acknowledges crimes were committed. It means the court is acknowledging that Donald Trump, the defendant, has been found guilty by a jury. But there will be no punishment. And now the case is over. That will be the unconditional discharge that Judge Juan Merchan hinted at Friday. It's acknowledging that a jury found Donald Trump guilty. There will be no punishment. Let the record show that he has been convicted. It is now over. Now, my understanding is that in New York State, Trump will remain a convicted felon. My understanding of New York law is, had Trump taken a plea deal, had he not put our courts through the ordeal of a trial, had he not exercised his constitutional right to an actual trial, which most Americans don't have the money to do, if he had not gone to trial, he could have received both an unconditional discharge and have the conviction expunged from the record. He was covering up sex with Stormy Daniels, and he gets an unconditional discharge. How appropriate. Well, anyway, that is my understanding of New York law. Because Trump insisted on a trial and because he was then found guilty, the judge cannot scrub the conviction from his record. This is enraging Donald Trump. All weekend, he was railing against Judge Juan Merchan because Trump hates being the first convicted felon to be sworn in as president. 2 years ago, at this time, Kevin McCarthy was going 15 rounds to get elected speaker. Donald Trump worked the phones and helped McCarthy win, the same way Trump worked the phones to put Johnson over the top on Friday. But, 8 months later, 9 months later, when Matt Gaetz introduced that motion to vacate, in October of 2023, so 9 months later, Trump offered zero help for McCarthy. And that's why McCarthy lost the speakership. Why did Trump turn his back on Kevin McCarthy? Because McCarthy is a liar. And you don't lie to a liar. He lied to Trump. McCarthy 2 years ago at this time, in return for Trump's support for Speaker, McCarthy promised to expunge Trump's 2 impeachments from the record. Trump also hates the fact that he's the only president to have been impeached twice. McCarthy lied 2 years ago and said to Donald Trump, "I'll take care of it. If you get on the phone and help me win the speakership, I'll take care of this." The problem is impeachments can't be expunged. They're indictments. They're just facts. There is no procedure to undo an impeachment because it is a reality of history. I mean, theoretically, what? You could reconvene the previous House of Representatives and ask them to vote to expunge the impeachment? That would be the 117th Congress. But that House is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The virulent racist and genocidal maniac, President Andrew Jackson, is Donald Trump's favorite. Of all the commanders-in-chief, Andrew Jackson is his favorite. He keeps a picture of Andrew Jackson on his Oval Office wall. They're taking Andrew Jackson's face off our money. What is he, on the $10 bill or the 20? I don't know. They're going to be taking his face off because of the Trail of Tears, because he's a genocidal maniac. Donald Trump, his favorite president. So, I think Trump has a very slight grasp of history. I think he was confused because President Jackson was censured, not impeached. He was censured by the Senate. I'd like to see Nancy Pelosi try to say censured. Jackson was censured, not impeached, by the Senate. Why? For destroying the second bank of the United States. Jackson was a Democrat. He was censured in 1834 by a Senate controlled by the Whigs. Okay, that was 1834. He's censured, but in 1837, the Democrats take back control of the Senate, and they succeed in passing a resolution to expunge Andrew Jackson's censure. So this is probably what that imbecile Donald Trump is thinking when he demands that McCarthy expunge these impeachments. There are no provisions for expunging a fact. An impeachment is just a fact. It's an indictment. You're either indicted or you're not. And by the way, expunging Jackson's censure meant nothing because he was still censured. Senator Joe McCarthy was censured in the 50s. The Republicans could now expunge that censure 70 years after the fact. But the record still shows he was censured. The record still shows that this genocidal maniac, Andrew Jackson, was censured. Wait, I'm being told Andrew Jackson is angry with me. And is this true? Old Hickory has something to say.
Whoa, land sakes. You are so smart, David Feldman. Wowsy. Wow. That's some rip-roaring entertainment you got going there. David Feldman looked something up on Wikipedia. I'll be hanged. Give this fossilized boar a Golden Globe. Give it to him in the category of outstanding achievement in looking up useless bunkum on Wikipedia that nobody cares a rip-snorting Sam Hill about. You're not smart, Feldman. People who have to act smart aren't smart. You stink, David Feldman. Your show stinks. Your listeners stink. I'm starting to stink just telling you stink.
Wow. Point taken. I think I might have agreed with everything he said. Anyway, it drives Trump crazy that he was impeached twice, and he's now a convicted felon. He will spend a fortune trying to get the sentence that Juan Merchant is handing down. He will try to get that overturned on appeal. But he enters office, going down in history as the first convicted felon. And he's still been ordered to pay E. Jean Carroll close to $90 million after a jury decided he defamed her, after he raped her in common law parlance. He raped her in Bergdorf Goodman in common law parlance, but he raped her in common law parlance. What does that mean? The judge in the case, Lewis Kaplan, twice put into writing that while New York State differentiates between rape and sexual assault, he said by any reasonable standard, under common law parlance, as rape is understood by most courts, E. Jean Carroll's attorney succeeded in convincing the jury that Donald Trump raped her. That civil lawsuit continues into the White House. Sitting presidents, ex-presidents, cannot be sued in civil court for anything they did as president, but they can be sued for anything they did when they weren't president. And those trials can take place while they are president. That's why Bill Clinton had to sit for a deposition while he was president in the Paula Jones sexual harassment lawsuit. Supreme Court said, you are accused of sexually harassing Paula Jones before you were president. She's suing you. You're busy, but you have time on the weekend to sit for a deposition. And they followed through with the civil lawsuit. It was a sting operation. I've been over that. That's why he got impeached. But during the past 4 years, Donald Trump has committed crimes that don't fall under the penumbra of presidential immunity. He can't be tried while he's president, but 4 years from now, he's also, you can sue Donald Trump in civil court for anything he did during the past 4 years. You can sue him right now while he's president. This is what Trump has hanging over his head going into his inauguration. And of course, the state of New York, Letitia James, Attorney General, who brought down the NRA. She also brought down Donald Trump. She found, the state of New York found Donald Trump liable for defrauding banks and investors. The judge ordered Trump to pay a $500 million fine. Trump will be appealing that ruling while in the Oval Office. So the DOJ is shut down. They're not going to try to put Donald Trump in prison. But the civil courts, anything he did before he was president or after he was president, you can sue him. John Thune is the new majority leader. Constitutionally, in the Senate. Constitutionally, Thune, unlike Mike Johnson, the Speaker, constitutionally, John Thune, the new Republican majority leader, will play a major role in staffing both the executive and the judicial branch. There are three branches of government, right? Executive branch is the White House. Legislative branch is Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. It's called a bicameral Congress, two houses. And then the judicial branch is the Supreme Court. Constitutionally, it is the Senate working with the president that staffs the executive and the judicial branch. It is the Senate, not the House of Representatives, that confirms all heads of our federal agencies, but they have to be nominated by Trump. It is the Senate that confirms not just the Attorney General, but the top prosecutors working under the Attorney General. I think there are about 90, all the district prosecutors. It is the Senate that confirms the head of the FBI, as well as all new federal judges, including the Supreme Court. House of Representatives has nothing to do with any of that. It's the Senate. Budgets start in the House of Representatives, traditionally. Most bills are supposed to come out of the House of Representatives. But it is the Senate that does the hiring, from ambassadors to every single cabinet level position. And this is the hiring season. First up will be Fox News's host, Pete Hegseth. His confirmation hearings begin on the 14th of this month. Before the inauguration, these hearings will take place. It's going to be a tough one. John Thune, Senate Majority Leader, he's doing the hiring. You need 51 votes. You can't filibuster a nomination. You just need, it's a straight thumbs up, thumbs down. Thune has reportedly told Trump the votes are now there for Pete Hegseth to become defense secretary, despite rape allegations as well as accusations of sexual harassment, alcoholism, and financial mismanagement of two charitable organizations he ran before joining Fox News. Thune has reportedly told Mar-a-Lago that the votes are not there yet for Trump's pick of Kash Patel for FBI. So conventional wisdom is Hegseth will get through, Kash Patel will have a hard time. But, you know, who knows? These hearings, the hearings for Hegseth will be eerily reminiscent of Kavanaugh. And I'm going to assume women are going to step forward. With Kavanaugh, the FBI handed something like 500 tips to the White House of women complaining about Kavanaugh, and the White House completely ignored those tips. Thune, Majority Leader, Republican, endorsed South Carolina Senator Tim Scott for president. He waited, but eventually endorsed Donald Trump. John Thune from South Dakota is generally perceived as Mitch McConnell's rightful heir. This makes him an institutionalist who, like McConnell, will fight executive overreach. McConnell, look, on the really big issues, like cutting taxes for the rich or pushing through extreme right judges, McConnell and Thune will greenlight all of Trump's picks, short of some personal scandal in a nominee's life. We'll see. Friday was Thune's first day as Senate Majority Leader. In his opening speech to the Senate, Thune said, this is what he honestly believes he believes. Growing up, this is what he said, growing up, we knew that if a roof collapsed under the weight of snow, this is growing up in South Dakota. Growing up in South Dakota, we knew that if a roof collapsed under the weight of snow, or a windstorm came through and wiped out a barn, or we lost a friend or family member, the whole community would rally to help. The community, not the government, the community. And that same attitude is reflected in towns across the great state of South Dakota. The South Dakota values I learned growing up helped shape my political philosophy. My belief that government should be limited, that it is best when it is closest to the people, and that if a matter can be handled at the state or the local level, it should be. He's an idiot. So you just come up with this fictitious Eden that never existed in South Dakota, of the community gathering. Well, the states are the laboratories of democracy. So here's an idea, John Thune. I'll make a deal with you. All the federal taxes that South Dakotans pay, have it go directly to the state government. Let them keep all the federal taxes, and the federal government will just hands off. Next time there's a federal, you take care of it. Have the states and local, have the state of South Dakota handle all the problems. You get to keep all that federal tax money that you pay to Washington, all $2 that South Dakota pays into the federal government. You can keep that and use that $2 that the people of South Dakota pay into the federal government. The state can keep that, and because they can decide best what to do with the money. We're being run by hicks, okay? I have nothing against the people of South Dakota. And I know I live in New York, and everyone, including me in New York, is an a-hole. But there's a hick mentality that's pervasive in this country where the least informed know the most. That's what people think. The least educated, the people who read the less, the people who read the least, the people, we got to trust them. They know what's best. The problem is because everyone who graduated from Harvard should be rounded up and placed in a re-education camp. I mean, the problem is these Ivy Leaguers. It's a whole other. Anyway, here's another hick from Louisiana. Great people in Louisiana, except for Mike Johnson. Except for Mike Johnson and his wife, great people in Louisiana. In his opening speech to the House of Representatives, the new speaker, Mike Johnson, on Friday lied. This guy is an effing liar. He read a prayer that he claimed Thomas Jefferson recited every day, in which Thomas Jefferson, a deist, would beg Jesus or the Lord for help. And Mike Johnson, this liar, recited this prayer that he said was Thomas Jefferson's. Well, the Thomas Jefferson Foundation immediately issued a statement calling Johnson's, quote, spurious, unquote. Spurious. And the Thomas Jefferson Foundation reminded Mike Johnson publicly that Thomas Jefferson was our founding father's biggest champion of separation of church and state. Hakeem Jeffries is the Democrat House Minority Leader. Came up, 3 votes short of becoming Speaker. He presented the gavel to Mike Johnson in that ceremony. And then in Hakeem Jeffries' opening speech on Friday, he said, Democrats will work with Republicans when Democrats feel Republicans are offering legislation that benefits all Americans, not just the rich. He warned you know what? He didn't say that. He didn't say all Americans. If you go back and listen to that speech, he said families and working Americans. That's the Democrats. If you listen to the language the Democrats are using, if you listen to what Kamala Harris said throughout her campaign, an opportunity economy for working families, for people who work to get ahead, to help them get. They're not talking about the poor. They're not talking about helping seniors, the disabled, mentally. I mean, it's just, I am so sick and tired of hearing about the fictitious working poor or the middle class or families. Half this country can't come up with $500 for an emergency. It has nothing to do with whether you're working. It's not about lowering costs, Hakeem. It's about providing stuff for free. Don't lower costs for health care. Like any other country that's civilized, you offer free health care. You don't lower the cost of tuition. You offer free tuition. You don't lower the cost of insulin or free pharmaceuticals, free daycare, and food for anyone who needs it. I'm not saying, I don't know what a 4-star restaurant is. What, Red Lobster? Applebee's? I'm not saying Applebee's, but I'm saying soup kitchens all over the country, 24 hours a day, free soup, free vegetables, free tofu, free food if you need it. Don't lower costs. This is why I sometimes hate the Democrats as much as I hate the Republicans. But Hakeem Jeffries warned the Republicans that he will fight them every step of the way as they try to finance a massive tax cut for the rich by eliminating our social safety net. He reminded Speaker Mike Johnson that the 119th Congress will be just like the 118th because nothing will get passed unless the Speaker works with Democrats. Now, you can get the congressional record. It's a daily printout of every speech given in the Senate and the House. I recommend just go to congress.gov or something and read the congressional record. You'll get more information skimming the congressional record than you will watching any news network. The real news, the real information comes out of the House of Representatives, hearings, speeches by Bernie, the GAO, the CBO. All the information is there. So one of the things you can do is you can download the congressional record, put it into Microsoft Word, and do a word search. And I looked for Medicare for All. Wasn't there. Not a single, first day of the Senate, first day of Congress, not one Democrat even said the words Medicare for All. Jeffries then said, don't underestimate the Democratic Party's resolve.
We will fight hard to defend the freedom of opportunity that makes the American dream possible. We will fight hard for the freedom to vote.
Whoa. Can we hear that again? Did I hear that properly? Can you say that again?
We will fight hard.
Yeah, he did say that. Stephen Chung, White House communications director, is sitting in his stew, and he wanted to say something about Hakeem Jeffries talking about farting hard.
Would you like to see bubbles? I can make bubbles. Would you like me to make some bubbles for you? I know you want bubbles.
No, I don't want to see bubbles. No, I don't want to see bubbles. All right. Where am I? Some good news for Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Seen here with her new roommate, Laura Loomer. Look at that. They're roommates now. People are, Nancy Mace, this is true, Congresswoman Nancy Mace was engaged, and they broke up, and there's been a fight over the house that they shared. I'm not making this up. And apparently they're roommates now. I guess Laura Loomer, and that's true about Nancy Mace breaking up with her boyfriend and fighting over the house. Well, despite reports from several reliable sources to the contrary, her bathroom bill stipulating that biological males be banned from female congressional restrooms, it was, in fact, added to the new rules package on Friday. I kept reading. I saw the Daily Beast said Mike Johnson didn't enter her bathroom bill into the new rules on Friday, but in the congressional record, it's there. They added her new washroom ban. Women's rooms are now only for what Nancy Mace decides is a woman. And it's not just stopping with women's rooms. Now that Nancy Mace is on a roll, she's dictating what goes on inside the men's rooms at inside the Capitol. Mace, Friday, also got a rule passed banning gay pride urinal cakes in the men's room. No more gay pride urinal cakes in the men's rooms. No more gay pride urinal cakes. That was one of the reasons you would go to the Capitol, to delight in the delicious urinal cakes. Nancy Mace on Friday donned her patrol officer uniform. Here she is again in the men's room, handing out a ticket to Lindsey Graham for an improper lane change. Apparently, Lindsey has a wide stance, and she's writing him up. Improper lane change. You got to stay in your lane when you're sitting in the stalls. Here she is giving Speaker Mike Johnson a ticket for tailgating in the men's room. That's frowned upon. Officer Nancy doesn't like any tailgating in the men's room. Well, got exciting for Nancy Mace. On Friday, Officer Nancy returned to the ladies' room after Laura Boebert began screaming that the woman sitting next to her in the stall to her left was making loud grunting sounds that were highly masculine in nature. So Officer Nancy, worried that a biological male was using the ladies' washroom, Officer Nancy kicked open the door to the stall to discover who was making those loud masculine grunting sounds, and it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Officer Nancy gave Marjorie a fix-it ticket. This is the mop-up. Anybody still here? This is the mop-up for January 6th. 2024. All right. Where am I? I got a lot more to get to. President Biden has joined the EU in calling for cancer warnings on all alcohol labels. Or we could just show this picture of Rudy Giuliani flat on his ass at this summer's Republican convention. That is an actual picture of this drunk Rudy Giuliani flat on his ass at the Republican convention. When we last left Rudy Giuliani, he faced two contempt charges in two separate courtrooms. He has a major hearing today to determine whether Rudy has been willfully ignoring orders to turn over his New York City apartment, as well as a 1980 Mercedes, some watches, Yankees memorabilia, and other items in order to pay down a $150 million judgment awarded to the mother and daughter Georgia election workers he defamed by repeatedly accusing them of stuffing ballots for Joe Biden back in 2020. As I said at the top of the show, Rudy could be found in contempt of court today. I doubt it, but eventually he's going to be found in contempt of court. There is the possibility, I doubt it, that today he could be sentenced to jail. I doubt it. But the judge in the case on Friday seemed irritated and at the same time sympathetic as Rudy sat on the stand for 3 hours. He wasn't able to, 3 hours without a drink. Rudy told the judge he didn't want to give the mother-daughter election workers his grandfather's 120-year-old gold pocket watch because, and I quote, "I felt it could get lost if I turned it over." It's being taken away from you, Rudy. It's not being lost. It's being taken away from you. Then, during a break in the hearing, and this is straight out of The Sopranos, and this is Giuliani accused a courtroom sketch artist of making him look like a dog. He leaned over, he looked at her sketch, and he said, "You're making me look like a dog." That's what Uncle June did. Uncle June faked senility and got angry at the sketch artist. So Rudy faces two contempt charges in two separate courts. Today's hearing will determine whether he has willfully ignored orders to hand over all his worldly possessions to these election workers. He's got to give everything to these election workers. Rudy's other contempt hearing will be in Washington, D.C. before a federal judge to determine whether Rudy has repeatedly violated court orders to stop defaming these two election workers in public. He won't stop, despite admitting in court that he defamed them. Despite admitting in court that he had no reason to believe they were stuffing ballots, Rudy has only challenged the enormity of the judgment, the $148 million. He's not denying that he defamed them. He's saying that the punitive nature of the judgment is excessive. Rudy will admit before the judge that he defamed them, and then goes right outside, sees a bank of microphones, and tells reporters that he's not only innocent, but the two women are guilty of stuffing ballots, and I have the evidence to prove it. He won't stop saying this. This is why he has to become a ward of the state. He's going to be 81. That brain has been stewing in whiskey and bourbon for 81 years. I think his mother breastfed him, Jim Beam. Anyway, so Rudy has been disbarred in New York City and Washington, D.C. It bears repeating that Rudy is also being sued for rape. Is there anybody in Trump's orbit, the men who they sure seem to find a welcome mat at Mar-a-Lago if there's been a rape allegation or a sexual harassment suit or 300 or, I mean, I've done episodes just going over the list. So, Donald Trump for the next 4 years is immune from prosecution. But everyone working for him, not so much. Some of them may be, the ones working really close, like Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff, there's executive privilege there. There's an immunity there. But, this Lutnick guy who's going to be Commerce Secretary, there's going to be a feeding frenzy of Donald Trump's associates coming. Lutnick just bought Brett Baer's $25 million home in D.C. They are coming to loot our treasury. They're not getting rid of the administrative state. They are looting. To the victor go the spoils. And they're going to be breaking laws. They can't help themselves. And yes, we will have a Department of Justice that won't prosecute for the first 2 years. But once Democrats get control of the House and the Senate in 2 years, the first Trump administration was a honey trap. He came in, right? He had the House and the Senate. when he first, in 2017. It was identical. But it was a honey trap. His administration and the new one attracts the worst of the worst. And as we saw, many, if not most, ended up doing time in prison, indicted, broken, reputations in tatters. Nobody comes out of it. You know, Kellyanne Conway's life has been divorced. Her the kids, Bannon went to prison. Look, Manafort went to prison. I mean, I believe, and I mean this, Donald Trump is the world's greatest sting operation. He's supposed to walk. He's not supposed to go to jail. Because the people drawn to him, that's what it's all about. I believe that Donald Trump has been a mafia informer going all the way back to the late 70s. You cannot pour concrete in Manhattan. And somehow, when Rudy was prosecuting the mafia, Donald skated. I think Rudy made a deal with Donald Trump when Rudy was prosecuting the mafia. I think Donald Trump is a mafia informer. And instead of putting Donald Trump in the witness protection program, Rudy and the Justice Department decided back in the 80s, wait a second, this guy is the ultimate honey trap. We got to keep this guy around. We got to make sure he stays in business. We got to give him money because he is irresistible bait for the criminal element. I believe that sort of. Well, I have some good news about Donald Trump. You have a second? There's a Brett Ratner. He's an amazing talent. If you've ever seen his movies, he's up there with Orson Welles, but he's handsome and charming, and he's a successful director and gorgeous. This guy could have any woman he wants just by smiling because he's Brett Ratner. There has been a massive conspiracy going back to 2008 to destroy Brett Ratner because he's so good looking and so talented, so handsome and charming. Brett Ratner, the wildly successful Hollywood director. By the way, thank you for all the joy, Brett Ratner, that you've brought, not just to me, but to my family. He was all set to produce the Oscars back in May of 2013. This was 12 years ago. But he gave an interview where he said he doesn't like rehearsing his actors, adding, quote, rehearsals are for F words. But he said the F word. It's a slur against the gay community. He also, at the time, reportedly said of actress Olivia Munn, quote, I banged her, but I forgot her. He said he was joking. But that wasn't good enough because of this massive left-wing conspiracy to destroy a good person like Brett Ratner. He was supposed to produce the Oscars 12 years ago, but they threw him off. He couldn't produce the Oscars because of what he said. Great guy that he is. Even though the Oscars fired him, he donated $1 million to the Movie Academy. They fired him. He donates $1 million to the Movie Academy because he is able to forgive. He's almost Christ-like, Brett Ratner. And he really is, because there have been so many stations of the cross for this great man. For example, back in 2017, at the height of the Me Too movement, the conspiracy against Brett Ratner turned into a mania. Suddenly, all these women, I believe, falsely accuse this handsome, talented, buff, and smart director. They accuse him of saying and doing these horrible things. Now, according to the Los Angeles Times, fake news, according to the Los Angeles Times back in 2017, 6 women stepped forward to accuse Ratner of sexual harassment or misconduct. Does that sound like Brett Ratner? Doesn't sound like Brett Ratner to me. And don't you think it's a little biased asking 6 women whether or not Brett Ratner sexually harassed them? Why don't you ask men if he sexually harassed women? It seems to me you want to be fair and balanced. It just got Stations of the Cross. They just lashed him. It was the passion of the Ratner. November 10th, 2017. Let me read the headline. This is from Variety. The knives come out, right? November 10th, 2017. Ellen Page accuses Brett Ratner of homophobic behavior on X-Men set. Wow. So you're telling me the same guy who gave $1 million to the movie Academy after they said he couldn't produce the Oscars because he said the F word, you're saying after he gave $1 million he would have be guilty of homophobic behavior? See what happens to great men? Great, handsome. I mean, look at this man. Look at him. He's powerful, he's handsome, buff. And then they pile on. People magazine, same year. Headline, Olivia Munn and multiple women accuse Rush Hour director Brett Ratner of sexual misconduct. Olivia Munn wrote a piece, I believe it was in Entertainment Weekly, accusing Brett Ratner of misconduct. This is from CNN. And you know, he should just sue CNN. This is from November 1st, 2017. CNN. Director and producer Brett Ratner is the latest Hollywood figure accused of sexual misconduct. In a Los Angeles story published Wednesday, 6 women, including actresses Olivia Munn and Natasha Henstridge, accused Ratner of allegations ranging from sexual assault to harassment in incidents in private homes, at industry events, and on movie sets. Ratner denied the allegations outlined in the report to CNN through his attorney, Martin Singer, through his attorney. Well, that must mean, wow, poor guy had to get an attorney. This is what the massive left-wing conspiracy against Brett Ratner did to the guy. Henstridge, the actress who is best known for roles in the 1995 film Species and 2000's The Whole Nine Yards, told the publication, that would be the Los Angeles Times, that when she was a 19-year-old fashion model and Ratner, a 20-something up-and-coming music video director, she found herself alone with him in his New York apartment after an evening there with friends. The actress alleged that Ratner, quote, blocked the doorway with his body and wouldn't budge when she tried to leave and began, quote unquote, touching himself before forcing her to perform oral sex. Quote, he strong-armed me in a real way. He physically forced himself on me, she said. At some point, I gave in and he did his thing, unquote. What a horrible thing to say about Brett Ratner. Unbelievable. The lie. I hope he sued. And then it got even worse. This vast left-wing conspiracy against Brett Ratner got worse. Headline from The Guardian. Brett Ratner accused of rape in most serious allegation yet against filmmaker. And so he sued. He sued the accuser for defamation. And then he dropped it because he's Christ-like. See, a woman accuses him of rape. And Son of God that Brett Ratner is, he forgave her. Initially, he sued her for defamation. And he said, you know what? Turn the other cheek. But, it doesn't pay to be a good person, Brett Ratner shows us. He's forgiven all these women within months. Headline, Entertainment Weekly, Warner Brothers cuts ties with Brett Ratner in wake of sexual misconduct allegations. They destroyed this great man. They destroyed a great man. And it didn't just start until, it goes all the way back to 2008. I'm going to read you. This is an article. I remember reading this. This is from the Jewish Journal, October 23rd, 2008. And it's written by a female. Figures, right? Figures. Danielle Barron, October of 2008. Okay? Jewish Journal. The headline is, just a nice Jewish director, public and private images of Brett Ratner clash. Okay? This is Me Too movement with 2017, the year Donald Trump took office. So this is what? 9 years. This is the beginning of the vast left-wing conspiracy. This is the very first paragraph in this profile on the great Christ-like Brett Ratner that Danielle Barron from the Jewish Journal, Danielle, a woman, obviously biased, this is what she wrote. First paragraph. I've been cornered downstairs in the Gold Lame disco basement at Brett Ratner's house, and he's hitting on me. Those are the first words in this article. The bias. She continues. His insistence suggests he's accustomed to getting his way with this, and I'm trying not to think about the surroundings. A wealthy bachelor's lavish playpen, which quite conspicuously insinuates sex. Quote, can we go on a date? Ratner asks, drawing closer. My mom loves you. This is the first 4 paragraphs. She goes on, he doesn't seem to care that I'm a journalist on assignment or that when he offered to give me a tour of his Benedict Canyon mansion, I was thrilled to explore the architecture, a Tudor-style estate designed by Hoover Dam architect Gordon Kaufman. I push him away and tell him I'm seeing someone, but he insists that shouldn't matter since I'm not married yet. See, they've been coming, they were planning to destroy this guy as far back as 2008. Where are we? Oh, let's continue. Now, this is just unforgivable. She goes on to write, Brett Ratner, grew up on Miami Beach, where beginning in preschool, he attended RASG Hebrew Academy until he was expelled in the 8th grade for touching a female classmate. Really, you have to bring that up. See what they're trying to do? They're trying to set the predicate to establish patterns of behavior. It's so transparent that they've been trying to destroy this. Look at him. Do you think he needs to force himself on a woman? He can have any woman he wants, because what woman doesn't want to be around Brett Ratner? The buff, brilliant Brett Ratner. They destroyed his career. But I have some good news. Good news. You know who's bailed him out? Donald Trump. Donald Trump bailed Brett Ratner out yesterday because, like Brett Ratner, Donald Trump sees the good in everybody. And headline, Los Angeles Times, Brett Ratner directs Melania Trump documentary on Prime Video. It's going to be on Amazon. Jeff Bezos has forgiven Brett Ratner, and they're doing this big documentary. It's authorized, an authorized documentary about Melania, and Brett Ratner's back in the game because Donald Trump is saying this guy is innocent. This guy, and you got to trust Donald Trump, right? You know Donald Trump wouldn't hire Brett Ratner if Brett Ratner was guilty. Especially to be around Melania, to film Melania. You know Ratner is innocent because Donald Trump would never let his Melania near a predator. Look at these pictures of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein, Melania, and Ghislaine. Look at how Donald is protecting Melania from Epstein. You're listening to the David Feldman Show. This is the mop-up for January 6, 2024. How are we on time here? U.S. steel is not for sale. President Biden blocked Japan's Nippon Steel bid to purchase the American steel company. Biden cited concern over national security, protecting union jobs, and he was worried that foreign ownership would create supply chain issues. He's just trying to win votes in Pennsylvania for the next Democrat. You might remember Trump has repeatedly suggested that he wants to buy Greenland from Denmark or trade it for Puerto Rico. He literally said, why don't we trade Greenland for, we'll give the Danes Puerto Rico and they give us Greenland. Well, Greenland's prime minister during his New Year's Day speech said he wants independence from Denmark. The prime minister said he wants to, quote, shake off colonial-era shackles. Greenland, he said, deserves to own its natural resources, especially the fisheries, and they've drafted a new constitution. They want to break away from Denmark, so I think we're going to be hearing a lot. I never thought this was an actual thing, but Greenland, Denmark, and Trump. Pretty soon, we're looking at least a 10-hour news cycle on this. The Department of Defense said the Vegas and New Orleans incidents on New Year's Day are unconnected. Well, I think there's a link. Income inequality. If you're looking at this, both suspects either had financial problems or were obsessed with income inequality. They went off the deep end. I think income inequality played a major role in both these incidents. Las Vegas' sheriff is now calling Matthew Livelsberger a lone wolf. He's the guy who allegedly blew himself up in a Tesla outside the Trump International Hotel on New Year's Day. The sheriff of Las Vegas is also a veteran. He says writings that Livelsberger left behind reveal post-traumatic stress syndrome from his military service in Afghanistan. The Las Vegas sheriff said a manifesto was left behind. And if you read the manifesto, he says the suicide was, quote unquote, spectacle to protest America's weak and feckless leadership, unquote. Despite the explosion taking place outside Trump International Hotel while he was sitting in a Tesla, Livelsberger's suicide, according to the Las Vegas sheriff, had nothing to do with hatred for Trump or Elon Musk. That's what the sheriff of Las Vegas said. He said it's in the manifesto, and he said it reveals no hatred for Trump or Elon Musk. Well, I read the manifesto. It's online. It's very short. He actually urges people, Livelsberger in the manifesto, urges people to rally around Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Bobby Kennedy. So the sheriff of Las Vegas is hiding who this guy really might be. Now, we've talked about the natural propensity of local police officers to side with far-right extremists. This guy, Livelsberger, was a far-right extremist and a Republican. On the last show, we went over the propensity of local police to side with far-right extremists. It's not just here in America. It's the nature of the job of being a cop. You tend to side with the authoritarians. There's money in it for you if authoritarians take over because they can't do it without the police. The Las Vegas police chief refused to tell us who Matthew Allen Livelsberger really was. But again, all you have to do is read his manifesto to know that he is not just a Green Beret, or was a Green Beret, suffering from PTSD. He was a fascist. And that's an uncomfortable truth that the Las Vegas police sheriff rather keep from us. It's embarrassing that he was a fascist. In Livelsberger's manifesto, he complains about the richest 1%, but then he espouses the faux populism that is endemic to fascism. And that is to rally around Trump, Musk, and Kennedy, and the Second Amendment. In his manifesto, Livelsberger calls DEI a cancer. Well, the truth is there is a cancer. It is the right-wing extremism in our military. It is the right-wing extremism in local law enforcement. How many soldiers and police officers stormed the Capitol 4 years ago? Fascism, embracing fascism, is a form of PTSD. Hitler embraced fascism. He was suffering from PTSD. He went blind from shell shock during World War I. You really can't have fascists without PTSD, unresolved PTSD. When you send soldiers off to fight stupid wars, it warps their minds. Fascism preys on warped minds. Livelsberger's manifesto reads, now, I don't like to give oxygen to people like this, but you need to know who the Las Vegas sheriff is kind of protecting and why. Livelsberger writes in his manifesto, it's online, fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves. Military and veterans, move on Washington, D.C. starting now. Militias facilitate and augment this activity. He's calling for another insurrection like January 6th. Again, I wouldn't give oxygen to this type, but these people are among us. They're in our military. There was a big problem when Joe Biden was inaugurated, and Defense Secretary Austin had to go in and cleanse the military of right-wing extremists. Pete Hegseth, who's going to be our defense secretary, he's in the National Guard. He was not allowed to stand guard for Joe Biden's inauguration. He had a tattoo. They didn't think he could be trusted to protect Joe Biden. You know how I know that's true? Because it's in Pete Hegseth's book. He said because of his tattoo, he was not allowed to serve in the military on Inauguration Day. What the Las Vegas Police Department doesn't want you to know is Livelsberger was both a fascist and a Republican. They want to tamp down this information because they think he was having a bad day. I suspect the sheriff, who's also a veteran, is thinking, there but for the grace of God go I. Livelsberger writes, occupy every major road along federal buildings and the campus of federal buildings by the hundreds of thousands. This is his manifesto. Allegedly. I mean, this is what was released by the FBI. But the media isn't really reporting this. Livelsberger writes, lock the highways around down. Lock the highways around down with semis, means trucks like they did up in Canada, right after everyone gets in. Hold until the purge is complete. Then he writes, try peaceful means first, but be prepared to fight to get the Dems out of the federal government and military by any means necessary. Try peaceful means first, but be prepared to fight to get the Democrats out of the federal government and military by any means necessary. This guy was a fascist and a Republican, and I don't know if he understood how Teslas explode. He injured 7. I don't know what he was planning to do, because Teslas explode the way they exploded. It didn't do the damage that maybe he was planning. He writes on the Democrats, they all must go, and a hard reset must occur for our country to avoid collapse. This is something they don't want us to read. Meanwhile, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security fear copycats following the New Orleans attack that happened also on New Year's Day. The FBI saying Shamsuddin Jabbar, the Bourbon Street suspect, traveled to Egypt in 2023. An examination of Jabbar's meta-glasses, these are those smart glasses, an examination of meta-glasses reveal he took 2 trips to New Orleans planning this attack. Jabbar reportedly used semiotic weapons in his attack, but so far there's no information as to how many of the 14 victims died from gunshots and how many died from getting run over by him. This is being mostly reported as somebody driving their car into a crowd. But he hopped out and opened fire. How many died from the semi-automatic weapons? I'd like to know. The Sugar Bowl was delayed 1 day because of this attack. The game between the University of Georgia and Notre Dame was sponsored by Allstate, whose CEO, Tom Wilson, recorded this message before the game.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
I don't know if you could hear that the sound on that was the best I could do with the sound. But he's saying just recognize people's differences and let's not be so divisive. Well, apparently people were offended by that. And he had to take that video down, calling for people to come together. They found that offensive. Charlie Kirk from Turning Point, USA. He went after the head of Allstate on Twitter. A jihadist killed and maimed dozens of innocent Americans in a hate-fueled rampage, and the CEO of Allstate thinks Americans watching the Sugar Bowl need a lecture from him on overcoming, quote, an addiction to divisiveness and negativity? Absolutely not. Charlie Kirk is suffering from an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Well, actually, he's making a lot of money off divisiveness and negativity. And he's already decided this guy was a jihadist because of his affinity to ISIS. Well, so far we're being told that he acted alone. Now, he went to Egypt last year, but we're being assured that he was a lone wolf. You can always just hold your opinion and study the facts. Or you can just call this a jihadist, and we should be what? Sending troops to Syria to fight ISIS? Is that what Charlie Kirk wants? What do you want? Or why don't we wait till we have all the facts? Or let's just be divisive and negative. I think, from what I've been reading, Shamsuddin Jabbar, what do I know? I suspect ISIS didn't recruit him. That's just my opinion. This is conjecture. I suspect, like the guy in Las Vegas, he was going crazy. I suspect this, from what I've been reading, Shamsuddin Jabbar was a broke. He was like $50,000 in debt. He was a broke veteran of color trying to survive in the United States. I think he went off the deep end. And just instead of embracing fascism, he embraced ISIS. Over the weekend, the Pentagon insisted the 2,000 American troops in Syria are only there to defeat ISIS. We do have 2,000 troops in Syria fighting ISIS, despite reports from locals in Syria seeing American troops loading concrete. The Pentagon said there are no plans for a permanent base in northeast Syria. The Biden administration said Friday that ISIS is fighting in both Syria and Iraq. ISIS, you may recall, is a Sunni organization that has launched attacks on Iranian troops in Iraq and Syria and Iran. ISIS has killed Iranians in Iran. The U.S. military is working closely with the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF. They're a rebel group. Our troops are working with the SDF to defeat ISIS. The SDF is Kurdish-led. It's a coalition of left-wing, ethnic militia, and rebel groups. The UN said on Friday 90% of Gaza's 2.1 million people have been displaced. The World Health Organization says 12,000 Palestinians in Gaza require medical evacuation. Israel says it has brought 1,000 Palestinians out of Gaza into Israel for medical treatment. The UN warned on Friday that 500,000 Gaza women lack menstrual hygiene products. The UN said Friday that Israel arrested Dr. Hussein Abu Safia, the director of Kama Adwan Hospital, which is northern Gaza's last remaining hospital, although there are some reports saying it's been shut down. The UN said Friday that Hamas continues to use civilian infrastructure in Gaza to launch attacks on Israel. Some of you complained that I don't report on Ukraine and Israel. I do it at the end of the show. So if I find it very upsetting, and it's a personal prerogative to wait till the end of my show. Anybody still here? Okay. Hi. I got some goofy stuff, and then I'll go. What do I've got here? I don't know if this is real or not. You know Robert Smigel? Oh, I don't have it. Do I have it? I thought he sent me something. Is this real? So I am being told, and I don't know if this is true or not, that Donald Trump has forgiven Chris Christie. You might remember Chris Christie ran for president in 2016. He was defeated by Donald Trump. Then he endorsed Donald Trump. He was Trump's debate prep coach back in 2020. And then Chris Christie turned on Trump and went after him with everything he got. He ran for president last year, and Trump just has mocked him mercilessly. But Smigel, or somebody, I don't know who sent this to me, this is a speech from Donald Trump where he's not only forgiving Chris Christie. You tell me if this is real.
I am pleased to announce that I have just nominated former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie as our nation's ambassador to funnel cake with chocolate sprinkles and whipped cream.
I don't know. It's so hard to tell with AI. Is that AI? Is it Trump? Who is that? I have been told that Trump added lyrics to Hail to the Chief, the song that they always play when the president enters. Dun, 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 dun. Trump, it drove Trump crazy that there were no lyrics to Hail to the Chief, and Smigel sent this to me. This is Donald Trump singing Hail to the Chief. And I guess we're going to be hearing this for the next 2 or 4 years.
Trumpity-bump, 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 meeting Spanish guy, trumpity-bump, signing things, trumpity-bump, trumpity-bump. Meanwhile, people are in cages, trumpity-bump-a-bump. Melania, happy, happy Melania, trumpity-bump-a-bump, bump. Okay, we got it. That was perfect.
Yeah, that's somebody just texted me. That's fake. Seems real to me. Seems perfectly real to me. Okay. What is going on here? What is this? I don't know what that is. It looks like somebody's toilet is clogged. I don't know. What is that? Who? What? That's Kimberly Gargoyle. Get out of here. All right. Who's still here? All right. I don't think this is real. I think this is AI, but I'm not sure. I shouldn't do this one. This one is really bad. I'm going to lose. Like, people who trust me are going to, everything. No, I'm not going to do it. Oh, all right. No, not going to do it. Not going to do it. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you liked any of this garbage, please share it. That's the only way to help me. Unless you're Smigel. What else? Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Brush your teeth. Tie your shoelaces, especially, you go out in public and, and dogs. Like, if your shoelaces are dragging through, tie your shoelaces. Pull your pants up. And again, don't come to my house, don't visit me and wash your socks and underwear in my kitchen sink. Thank you to Mila and Bob in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. And I read all your comments. If I made any mistakes, like doing the show, let me know. I think that covers everything. Check out all the useless garbage at shopdavidfeldman.com. I think that's it. Sorry to keep you waiting today. I'm just trying to remember how to do this. No show tomorrow morning. There will be a show when? Early Wednesday morning at 2:30. Thank you so much. Thank you.